one about Rogan again. What do you think happens? Can someone tell me in the chat? Do you think this is because I think is this just boomer brain? Because Rogan's kind of turning into that guy who looks. Because I can't imagine him being on Facebook. Because some of the things he talks about, they sound like he sits on Facebook and just like reads headlines and shit. So what do you think's happening? Do you think Rogan is on some like weird forums? Has he got a weird feed on Twitter he follows that gives him strange bits of news? Or is it just something that happens when you're older and you're rich? You just become a little bit, your brain just like, you become a bit tapped. Because this debate that he's having with, I forgot the UFC guy, he's a legend, I forgot his name. But they're talking, right? And just hear what they're two speaking about, and listen to how Joe Rogan interprets it, right? And keep this in your mind before you hear it. They're talking about 15-minute cities. 15-minute cities, right? And think about it from an urban planning point of view. And hear how Joe Rogan interprets the headline of 15-minute cities. Just think about this. Because it's a very interesting way to interpret something that's meant to help people. But hey, listen.
Well, there's also this talk of 15-mile cities, right?
Yeah, tell me about those. I don't know much about them.
The idea is you'll essentially
That's what this city
contained.
is. That's what this city is. But
You'll essentially be contained unless you get permission to leave.
that's true.
Really?
How are they going to put us in there?
The idea they're starting to roll out in Europe. They're talking about. I think they've already implemented this somewhere.
Well, you would think. Well, I'm just thinking about Lahaina when you're talking about this, because you would think, well, how are they going to put us on that land of these 15-minute cities? But then you would think, well, how are they going to get us off our land? But they just have. In Lahaina, they just got these people off their land, and if you go,
well, they're talking about it. They haven't done it
no,
yet.
No. I mean, they cannot go on their land now because there's a 80-year-old fella, and he wants his house burned down, and his safe is in there, and he wants to go check on his safe, but he can't get in. He can't get in the property. Asbestos our whole lives. We've cleaned it up thousands of times, put it in trash bags. It was on the ceilings before when we were kids. That white stuff.
Yeah.
And
like
now
little
nobody
balls
can. I haven't heard of anybody with asbestos. I mean,
Well,
I could be wrong.
it.
I just don't know who it is.
People got cancer from it for sure. Yeah, it's very, very cancer causing. Very.
Yeah, we literally used to play in that stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
we whack it off the roof and
not
and
good,
all
though.
that.
But that's not good.
And we're still here.
Well, listen, PJ, there was lead paint in people's houses. They had to remove that too because it was lowering kids' IQs. What?
That's the first concern, right? Lead paint lowers your kids' IQ. Anyway, 15-minute cities from an urban planning point of view. Maybe because I live in London and, I have a slight interest in urban planning. I kind of wish I did that in uni instead of fucking studying product design, which is a fucking waste of time, right? Like absolute waste of time. I wish I did something practical. I wish I fucking, did a fucking a vocation, like, stuff like, carpentry or being a plumber or electrician rather than doing fucking product design. Or if I would have done that, I would have done urban planning. I know about the 15-minute cities thing just because of in cities like London, where it's essentially technically overpopulated. There's not enough homes. The homes that are available and the people that are here, you have to kind of create a city or a town or a borough where they have all the amenities and all the things within a 15-mile radius. And the idea behind that is that you just improve the daily, the daily lives of people, because you allow them to have a chemist next to them, a pharmacy, a gym, a park, a good amount of work they can go to, so they don't have to travel hours out from where they live. They got schools and colleges. All these things kind of improve your basic life, right? Just in general. That's kind of the idea and the premise behind it. And obviously through that process, you can find ingenious ways of using space. Maybe you find other ways to develop housing. You find other ways to integrate green space. You find other ways to have like different things happening in your areas. That's all you want to do. And I don't understand why Rogan sees the 15-minute cities thing as a prison. He sees it as like an inevitable. He sees it as like one of those, what do you call it? He sees it like a Trojan horse for them to implement really strict restrictions on a population if another COVID happens. Because it feels like it's COVID brain. This feels like a COVID thing. People are scared and paranoid that if we have another lockdown and there's a 15-minute city, they can essentially put the fucking borders up and stop you from leaving, right? That's the really cynical, black pilled way to kind of look at things, and I don't think that's true. Do you know what I mean? You have to kind of be a little bit chill about these things and kind of realize that most likely it's not as sinister as you think it is. It's most likely a way to improve the daily lives of people that live in cities, because cities are kind of hard to live in, really, especially if they're not designed in a way to kind of allow you to have a good life in terms of green spaces, in terms of homes, in terms of jobs and shit. It's not easy to live in cities, especially if it's not designed well. So that whole 15-minute cities things, I'm sure there are bad elements to it for sure, but for the most part, it is mostly a thing to improve the lives of the people in that city. But for whatever reason, Rogan sees it as like a dystopian hellhole, right? It's like 1984 all over again. And I don't know if this is like a consequence of just being older, or if it's a consequence of being older and having money. Where if you're older and you have money, you get worried about losing your money. It's just a thing. I guess it's something that just happens, especially if you're kind of like quote unquote self-made. You just get worried about your money being taken away from you, or you get worried about your options being taken away from you, your agency. And if someone locks you down, as we've seen it with COVID, it affected everybody. Unless you went to a country where they didn't have any lockdowns, for the most part, everyone got affected. So maybe in his head, he's like, I don't want it to happen again. I've got PTSD from this shit. I'm not happening again. But it's just a very odd way to interpret something that's pretty chill. Let's play the clip.
What are those 15-minute cities?
Yeah, I'm curious
What
about
are the
that.
plans for these fucking things?
So I've heard of it, but as I look it up, there's an article from Canada that says it's a little bit of a conspiracy theory.
Canada's a conspiracy theory. Canada's literally a functioning conspiracy theory.
It's just a concept to bring things within.
Joe hates Canada so much, in it. All these guys, they hate Canada, they hate Justin Trudeau. It's all Jordan Peterson's fault. Jordan Peterson made all these guys hate Justin Trudeau, hate Canada, have all these crazy. I'm sure it's got its issues, but the way they make it seem is absolutely hilarious.
50
Right, but isn't there
50
something
people's
going on a
houses.
15-minute city that they tried in the UK? Isn't there something along those lines? Just Google that. 15-minute city in UK.
But I mean, what do you want me? I don't
Just
know what I'm
see what
looking
it.
for.
Just Google that. 15-minute city in UK.
I love when Jamie gets a bit tetchy with fucking Joe. I love it.
15-minute city.
I know it's going to come up, but I don't know what I'm looking for. Is what I'm saying.
They're telling Jamie how to Google.
Electric,
guy.
He's
electric
offended.
city or something, right?
This is
Well,
what
I mean, they've
pops up
talked
when I
about
type that in.
walkable communities for a long
don't
time.
know exactly.
15-minute hysteria.
That's from March.
Rather benign
looks-
urban planning concept. Yeah. The English city of Oxford. Click that. Yeah. Okay. An academic behind the hit urban. The hit. It's a hit, guys. It's like fucking Saturday Night Fever. It's a hit. The hit urban planning concept slammed flat earthers spreading fake news about livable cities. Oh yeah, you're a flat
Blame
earther.
the flat
if you don't want to
earthers.
be trapped in a 15-minute city.
Where's Kelly Slater when you need him?
So scroll down here. Is Kelly Slater a flat earther?
He jokes around. He just torches people all the time.
So a rather benign urban planning concept is shaking up the English city of Oxford, sending thousands of people into the streets to protest what they say is a dystopian plan to take away their personal freedoms and lock them into their neighborhoods. The concept of the 15-minute city, popularized by the Franco-Colombian academic Carlos Moreno, aims to make cities more livable by ensuring that all essential services, think schools, medical care, and shops, are within the distance of a short walk or bicycle ride.
What's wrong with that?
Broadly, the idea is to cut down on long commutes and car emissions.
Sounds good to
and
me.
improve people's quality of life, ensuring they have access to quality services where they live.
Exactly.
It's not the way it's being seen. In Oxford, news that the city council adopted a plan to embrace the 15-minute city model, prompted fierce backlash with local groups and public figures alleging that authorities plan to restrict residents to their immediate neighborhoods and strictly police their movements, which will happen eventually. The idea that that won't happen eventually, particularly in the case of a pandemic or something.
You know what I want to say with this? Maybe he's right. I just want some evidence. Have you got any evidence where that has happened? There's 15-minute cities all around the world. Can you show any evidence where a 15-minute city that was billed as one thing turned into be another thing? A dystopian hellhole, a police state, right? Like, tell me where those places exist and maybe I'll believe your conspiracy. But if you're just afraid of, oh, if another fucking pandemic happens, we're going to be forced to work together in order to stop the spread of it. Okay. Are they going to forcibly lock you inside your homes? Like, good luck trying that, especially in America with you guys all having arms and shit. That's not going to happen anyway. Even if they do make it fucking 15 minutes, people are going to do what they want. I think the pandemic showed that, right? Even if we have a worldwide fucking virus that's going around killing people, for the most part, everyone's going to do what the fuck they want to do. So the fact that people think that just because you live in a 15-minute city, you're going to be confined to your homes is legitimately insane. It's obviously there to help. I'm sure there are some economical reasons why you would make a 15-minute city, because technically if everything goes in 15 minutes, it's going to make it easier for you to get there. It's going to make it easier for you to shop, to spend more money. Those monies go back into the state. That state gets funded to other things, blah, 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 blah. So I'm sure there is a monetary gain that they're going to have from it, from having everything within 15 minutes. So you don't have to travel to other places and spend your money there. Big up Austin Casey. Appreciate it, brother.
The reason Rogan thinks that about 15-minute cities is because that's how it is being portrayed by all the media here in the US. They make it seem like you will be confined to a 15-minute area only.
It's insane because the 15-minute city, thank you Austin Casey for that. Appreciate the clarification. It's funny how it's different being perceived in places, because the what's that thing? There was a big move with Amazon. I'm not sure if they've done it yet in your country, but in here or in Europe, Amazon were test piloting a scheme for the what was it called? Was it the first mile, the last mile? So basically the premise behind it was that Amazon was trying to get to a point where if you went to order a charger for your phone, they could get it to you within an hour. So now you have Prime that comes the next day, they'll get you in an hour if it's within a 1 mile radius or something along those kind of lines, right? Because there's always these service centers around, especially if you live in a highly populated city or area, and that's something they've been obviously trying to push for. And obviously that sort of stuff have implication for local businesses. It'll mean like your local mobile phone shop may go out of business because everyone buys emergency chargers from their places because you can get it immediately. But if you can order a charger brand new from Amazon and it comes within an hour, there's no need to then go to your local boss man around the corner. So there's obviously always going to be cons for these things. They're not always done, you know, in a sort of like egalitarian, you know, like utopian view. They're not always done for just the betterment of people. Always there's always going to be something a bit sinister in the background, but it's not as sinister as he's making it out to be. That's the thing that's really spooking me. And I think it's interesting to see, because I wonder if it's just like one of those consequences of just being older and with money. You just get more worried and concerned, like all boomers do. You're just a little bit more, you know, worried about the future, which is odd because you've kind of got the most out of life. You're not going to spend all your money anyway. Why would you give a fuck? But if anything, they have the opposite reaction. Do you know what I mean? They get way more paranoid with stuff, and they always look at things incredibly cynically. So it kind of is what it is. But I find that really, very interesting. He saw a 15-minute headline and he thought it was essentially a prison sentence for anyone that lives there. And it's funny also because it doesn't affect him. Rogan can live anywhere that he wants, but he's concerned about 15-minute cities. Like, why do you care, sir? Like, it doesn't ever affect you, ever. But anyway, let's move on. Next clip here. Oh, I've got so many things I need to talk about still, innit? Bumba-ratted. So we played that. Yeah, let's... What do you think this is about? Tell me.